Dean Whiting is the Chief Executive of Pathology Technology Australia, one of the country's leading rapid test producers. Thanks for your time. Right now, it would seem like a pretty good business to be in, producing rapid tests. Why is $20 million needed from the government?
So just one correction there, Tom. I represent the manufacturers and suppliers. We're the peak body that looks after the suppliers into the pathology testing industry. But the question's a good one. We've lacked for many years a sovereign capability in manufacturing diagnostic tests in Australia. Over the last 50 years or so, there have been some terrific Australian inventions which have eventually found their way offshore, produced offshore, and then we end up buying them back as a finished good. I think the opportunity presents itself now for us to establish a proper manufacturing capability for tests like the rapid tests, tests for near patient testing, the point of care testing in rural and remote areas, tests for molecular testing, so DNA-based testing. We have some eminently capable companies in Australia who can do this. We just need a few settings right to be able to do that on a sustainable basis.
So when you say settings right, what does that mean, and where does the 20 million come into it?
So the 20 million is actually the cost of setting up a couple of lines that would manufacture the current rapid antigen tests. And if you set up two of these lines, that would cost in the region of 20 million. If you set them up in existing registered facilities, then they could produce about 2 million tests a week. So each line is capable of producing about 1.3 million tests a week, something like that. So that's where that 20 million comes from. But we would need a larger investment over time to establish a precinct in Australia somewhere where we could get this manufacturing happening on a large and sustainable basis. If we could do that, we could then employ more people. We could potentially export the products overseas to earn export dollars. And then those kinds of technologies would be available for Australians to use when we need them. And so if and when we get another pandemic the size of the one we're seeing now, we would have the capability already here to be able to ramp up, produce the tests we need, and be able to get on with it.
So what about supplies right now in the country? It seems a little bit hard to pin down where we are at exactly. Do you have information on how many we have in the country right now, ready to go in some form, whether they're being stored somewhere or not, and what sort of supply we're getting over the next 6 months that we have guaranteed?
Yeah, so currently the demand way outstrips the supply. So a lot of the warehouses of my members and the suppliers are empty at the minute, and so they are in the field already. We don't hold stock. We ship it as soon as we get it. So we've got about 3 million to 5 million tests arriving each week in Australia, and that's really not enough to meet demand. What you will find, though, is once Chinese New Year gets clear, we'll take another week or so to crank the supply chains up again. So by end of February, beginning of March, we should start to see quite good numbers coming in. I guess the slightly wary news is that we won't have, I think, supplies that exceed demand until well into March, potentially even later at this stage.
All right, so that's a couple of months away, and we know the demand is strong. We've got this push from Labor to make these tests free. What's your view on that? Because a lot of different countries around the world are having different approaches. Some, send out a small number to everybody and then just see if anybody needs more of them. What's the best way for us to manage demand and supply in the next few months when we do have more demand?
Yes, that's a great question. And look, each different country has tried a different approach. The UK gives 20 million tests a week away at the moment to citizens. You can pick them up at your local pharmacy. You can get them mail ordered to you. Singapore has got a similar program. The USA is just cranking up with a program at the moment where every citizen can get 10 of these tests. We would have to look at what would work well for Australia based on the supply that we've got. But I've been on the public record in the past as saying it's really an access and equity issue. I think we need to be able to supply these tests to those who need them, who may not be able to afford them. And the areas where I think we should be focusing is on small business, small and medium enterprises. frankly, they've been beaten up a lot over the last 2 years. If we could subsidise the cost of tests into those, then we would be far better off, I believe.
Just finally and briefly, the other issue to all of this, obviously, when we're talking about rapid antigen tests and the supply across the country, and something that everybody's grappling with right now, when you talk about distributing them and making them free for Australians, I know we've got this supply thing already, but do you agree, and this has been a bit of a controversial line from the government, that they're being hoarded, wasted by people, that people are trying to get too many of them?
I'd be surprised if that's happening. Really, I have not seen evidence of that. If I see the evidence, then terrific, but I've not seen evidence of that.
Okay. Very quick on actually the TGA approval, some complaints from people that they're not happening quickly enough. Could there be a quicker process, a quick interim approval, given this is not a product that will actually harm anybody unless it's misused?
The TGA's got a very, very clear set of checklists for the registration of these COVID rapid tests. If a manufacturer can check all of the check boxes on that, then I'm very reliably informed that a registration can pass through in as little as 5 days. So really, I think the TGA is doing a great job. And I think if manufacturers follow the instructions, then they will have no trouble getting through whatsoever.
All right, interesting. Heard a couple of them mention it seems to take them months. Maybe it's at their end. We'll keep asking. But Dean Whiting, thanks for your time.
You're welcome.